Have you ever been to a dinner party and where people introduce themselves and then they often ask you afterwards, so what do you do? And you go through and they hear all these pontifications about what people do, and you see that they're trying to find their validation and their credibility in life based in what they do. Well, this is often what has plagued the human race for centuries and since time began, is because we try to find our validation in what we do rather than in who we are. And so people ask me, what do you think God's will is for, my life or for life in general? And they always think of it in the sense of a direction. This is why a lot of people, when they think about, I want to do God's will, but I hope God doesn't send me here or send me there. Well, and that's also a reflection of their own personal surrender. But we often think of God's will in the context of a direction of what we should do for God. Well, I believe that God's will is not in what we do for Him, because what do I need to do for a perfect being? Absolutely nothing. He needs nothing from me. But God's will is discovering who we are in Him and who He created us to be. Now think for a second. Let's say that we're at this an art gallery and we're looking at this wonderful piece of artwork, and everyone's coming around and they're scratching their chins and again pontificating the meaning of this, that, or the other. But who's the only person who can tell us the intentional purpose of the painting? Well, it's the artist. It's Creator. And so if we want to discover who we are, we must move and shift from the paradigm of a human doing to a human being. And we can only understand what that means in light of our Creator. So we immediately see the need for God in a relationship with Him. So God does not want us to find our value in what we do, but rather in who we are. Now, when we're working off the human being paradigm, we will do some things, but it's not for our validation, but it's a love response because we've discovered who we are in Him. I hope this is beginning to make sense, because this is one of the biggest paradigm shifts of the transformation life of the Christian faith. And so what I find so really unique is when you take it even a step further. Think about this. A lot of people try to find their value in what they do. So if they're doing a lot of good things, they say, I'm a good person. If they've done a lot of bad things, then they say, I'm a bad person. But if God were to find our value that way, in the same way that we often do, God would have never made any one of us, because we've all done bad. So if you're sitting there struggling with all the things that you've done, think about this, that God, who is an omniscient being, before you were ever created to be and exist, God saw every moment of what your life would be, and He never retracted back and said, bad idea. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting in existence right now. God finds our value not in what we do, but God finds our value in who we are. We're human beings, because think about this. We were created in the image of the great being. Remember what God told Moses? He didn't say, I do what I do. He says, I am who I am, which is the ultimate state of being. And if we're created in His image, we're not to be a human doing. We're to discover what it truly means to be a human being.